Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Thompsin and Other Disappointments. This, of course, is a Fuck This Week edition, which, if it's your first time listening to this, it's where I just basically try to make sense of the senseless. Just listen to me rant and rail my way through the week's events and share my thoughts and invite you to share your thoughts. If you want to tweet at me, at Thompsin, or at I think it's at And Other Disappointments is the actually, do you know what, it's not, is it? It's at Oh Shut Up Aid. I think that was the, like, whatever it is, just Google Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments and I'm sure you'll find the Twitter for it, and don't forget to leave us a review. I'm trying to grow the podcast, so god damn it, just say hello, for fuck's sake. I'm coming to you live today from the belly of the beast, from Hipster Central, Dalston Junction. Thursday, you may or may not know this, Thursday's my day that I spend in London. I'm doing meetings and working from cafes and such. But I thought, you know what, on my lunch break today, let's do another episode. There's a lot going on this week. There's obviously the explosion in Tory corruption. There's the shit about Harry and Meghan that's just found its way across. Do you ever get the feeling that right-wing newspapers, God love them, I've really enjoyed their coverage of the Tory corruption shit this week, but there's also definitely an element of are they desperate to get that shit off the front page now? Like, has someone had a word with them, like, all right, you've had your fun, come on, you've given the people something to get angry about and to make it look like you're objective, but now can you just go back to Harry and Meghan? So that's what we've got today, is this big story that Harry and Meghan were secretly briefing unauthorised biographers to get their side of the story out, right? Now, I have been historically very sympathetic towards Harry and Meghan, because it sounded like they had a rough ride. It sounded like she, as a young mum, and, you know, like, my heart goes out to any sort of, like, you know, it doesn't matter how, you know, super rich or what privilege they come from. If you're a young mum or a young father, you've got a young family and you're struggling and you've got that anxiety and depression and you don't feel supported, that's a sad thing. And so I had a lot of sympathy for them, and it sounded as though when they reached out to get some help and support, it wasn't really taken very seriously. And so I had some sympathy with them when they bolted. Having said that, it does seem now as though something slightly untoward or underhand has taken place on their side of the argument. Like, the story that's come out today is that they briefed some unauthorised biographers to get their side of the story out, to get some truths out, is how they worded it. And then they said that they didn't. In court, they denied that they did. And so why is that a problem? Well, in court, obviously, you're supposed to tell the truth. You can't mislead the court. Certainly not the Queen's Counsel or the Crown Court, right? This is all very, you know, headed up by Buckingham Palace, ultimately. That's why it's called a Queen's Counsel and a Crown Court. So the idea that they've misled the court and lied to them about something, like basically put somebody on the stand to say that, no, I never had a conversation with those biographers, and now it turns out that they did, and their excuse for it is like, get this, they just go, yeah, well, we forgot that we briefed them. It's like, come on, man. Like, I'm on your side. I'm not a royalist by any stretch. You know, I'm not a total diehard lefty, you know, string them all up type. I'm happy to have some sort of royal family or royal presence for tradition's sake in the UK. It's part of our national identity. But at the same time, I'm like, you know, if you're gonna run away from Buckingham Palace and cry and scream about how unfair it is and how underhand it all is and how it, like, everyone's stuck in the firm, like, I feel really sorry for William because he's stuck in the firm and he can't ever leave, you know, all of that stuff. And they talked about the relationship between the tabloid press and Buckingham Palace and how it's this sort of awkward thing where the press are invited to Buckingham Palace and they get to shake hands with Prince William, and in exchange for that access, the royals get broadly positive coverage, and, you know, it's a deal with the devil. Like, they talked a lot about this relationship that they have with the press and how dishonest and how manipulative it is. And to go from that to now what appears to be them manipulating and controlling the messaging and then denying it, playing media games is just not the one, man. It just makes me go like, I was on your side. I really was. But I don't know about this, Is it just me that feels like that? Or is it like, have they sort of lost credibility a bit now? Because I want to like them. I think they stand for some really good causes, and it's nice when you see them, they've broken free and they're living in LA or wherever the fuck it is that they live, and they're on stages appealing for, I don't know, green initiatives and vaccine equity and all that stuff. I love all that. But the credibility and integrity piece starts with being honest and just putting out your messaging correctly, right? Like, if you've got some truths, this was the quote that they attributed to Prince Harry was, they said that in an email, they've got Prince Harry on an email saying, we need to be able to deny all connection with this book, right? So just take a second to digest that. He's emailing somebody and saying, I need to be in a position where publicly I can deny that I have briefed you about any of this shit. Now, that is basically saying I am going to lie to the public that I briefed. That, I'm going to play press games, I'm going to play media manipulation, but I'm going to lie to everybody. That's not cool. And his justification for it, in other quotes and other things that are attributed to them, and again, I don't fucking know how true this is, but it's all across all of the tabloid press, and it makes me think if it was false, it would probably just be on page 4 of the Daily Express or something. But the fact it's on all of them makes me think, oh, this is a bit of a smoking gun. But this other quote that they attributed to him was, so he said, the first thing he said was, I need to be able to deny this. And the second thing he said was, this could be a good opportunity for us to get some truths out there. And I'm thinking, what truths do you need to get out there that you haven't already got out there? Why do you, if that's the justification for playing media manipulation, then it doesn't hold water for me. It's like, I need to be able to get some truths out there. Cool, okay. What truths? Truths like the ones that you already fucking fire hydranted across the popular culture space last year when you were giving the Oprah interview. You were talking about, your wife was thinking about suicide and they didn't support her, and there were jokes made, racist jokes about whether she would have a black baby and all this shit. They're pretty harsh truths to get out there, and it didn't seem like there was any hesitancy. So what truths are we trying to get out that would necessitate flushing your credibility down the toilet? You don't flush in a bin, do you? What the fuck am I talking about? There's my credibility gone. So yeah, look, I don't know. I feel very uneasy about these revelations that are coming out now. And it gets to the point where you sort of think to yourself, am I being manipulated? Is this a real story? Or is this the way that Buckingham Palace move stories around and attribute quotes and pay people off to say that they've read different things and blah, blah, blah? Am I being played here to make so that people like me and you and, your cousin and everyone else read stories like this and then they go, oh, fuck, oh, I don't like that, and then we're turned off of Harry and Meghan, and then Harry and Meghan are ostracised and are super, super unpopular, and this is how it starts, Is that the game? I don't know is the answer to that, guys. I wish I did. But it feels like, is this me sort of second guessing myself? Is this is it Buckingham Palace playing 4-dimensional chess with me and other people like me? If we bleed this revelation out, it'll make people who are quite supportive of them as a couple start to hate them, And I don't want to give them the satisfaction of me also and going I hate them now. But it is, if it is to be believed, this stuff, then it does kind of make me hate them a bit. Because it's we're all about transparency on this podcast. We're all about sticking two fingers up at people who do manipulate. We're all about dismissing the right-wing press for distorting and contorting the narrative to appease their sort of billionaire right-wing press overlord owners. The last thing we want is two people who have actually made the brave and bold decision to leave Buckingham Palace and to say, we don't want to be a part of that. That's a weird setup. This Buck PR thing of this sort of state-sponsored PR department where all of the newspapers fawn over the Queen. Like, it's a weird setup. And for them to make that bold move to just go like, we're off, we want to be financially independent, that is a cool thing. But to then flush it down a toilet, man, like this is, look, I don't know. I'm going off on too much of a rant about this, but I was really jarred to read about that first thing this morning. I don't know. I think if you make that, this is my final point on this. I think if you make that shift, if you stick two fingers up to Buckingham Palace and you say, we don't want to be a part of this, and we leave, I think if your justification for leaving is something along the lines of like your morals and you're taking an ethical start, like we don't want to be a part of Buckingham Palace because we don't like the setup with the media and we didn't feel supported, and mental health, and we're against racism, and if that's your stance and your reason for leaving Buckingham Palace, I think you need to be your sheets have to be whiter than white. You've got to be so morally centered after that, because the second that you don't play nice, that you don't play fair, that you play media manipulation, it's like the equivalent of do you know that Friends episode when Phoebe makes a big song and dance about like when her friends cancel on her? It's it's not a very famous episode, but there's a scene in it where she makes a big fucking deal out of Joey cancelling plans on her because he was going to go and get some action somewhere, and she's like, friends don't cancel on each other, friends don't blah blah blah, and then it turns out that she has to cancel on him because her sort of like the love of her life is like leaving New York, and so she wants to spend that one last night with him, and then he sort of turns it right. It's like he's like, oh well, hang on a second, I thought that you said that, and it's sort of the media equivalent of that. It's like you can't say 1 minute like we're not down with this and morals this and ethics that and we don't feel at ease with this, and then in the next breath it turns out that you're doing some of the same shit. You've just got to have, like I say, you've got to have your sheets whiter than white if you do that. So yeah, look, that's the last thing I'm going to say about Harry and Meghan. How do you guys feel about it? Has this changed your perspective of them? Has it kind of made you think, fuck, everybody's been telling me that she's a bit of a dick and I've backed them up and now I feel like a bit of a dick myself, That's how I feel a little bit. I'm not totally Piers Morgan about this. I want to believe that this is all just like hearsay and exaggeration and willfully misinterpreted stuff, but I don't know, it doesn't look good. I'd be interested to hear how you guys feel about it. The other big story, of course, this week is Tory corruption, which has, as I mentioned earlier, has found its way right across the newspaper stands, from the Express to the Mail, even in the Telegraph, even on the front page of the Telegraph, in a tiny little thing. Boris Johnson's former employer finally saw fit to acknowledge that there may have been some sort of corruption story this week. So yeah, that's been hilarious to see explode. I think one of the interesting things about this is that this idea that you can be an MP and have a second job and it doesn't necessarily conflict with your job as an MP, right? And I mentioned this in a TikTok that you can, I want to be reasonable about this. Like you could be an MP and have a second job or a third job, or like a sort of, honorary board role, if such a thing exists. I could totally see, like, if I ran for local office and but I was also a director of a paperclip factory or a record label, I could absolutely do those two roles and just like attend meetings once a month, provide some sort of strategic guidance to the board. If they asked me for my input on X, Y, and Z, then I could do that. But that is not really what we're talking about here, is it? Like, because let's say I work for a paperclip factory because I'm interested in paperclips. Well, let's say my brother runs a record label and I'm an investor in it. I am then going to want to have some sort of say in how that business is run. But neither of those two scenarios have anything to do with me being an MP and wouldn't really benefit from my connections as an MP, in theory. But what we're talking about with MPs is where they hire these people directly because of their influence, because of their position, because of their connections, and because of the meetings that they can set up, and because of how they can contribute to sort of like lobbying and asking questions in Parliament, and how would we feel if we diluted the standards of food and beverages and blah, blah. You know, like it's that kind of crooked shit that we're talking about. And there's a lot of kind of pushback from people where they say, oh, well, it's not like that. You know, they take these board roles, they're paid $100,000 for like 2 hours a month, or, you know, it's an obscene amount of money to be on a board for that little time and dedication. And people say, oh, but it's got nothing to do. I mean, you couldn't, like, what lobbying, what real benefit could you be providing to those people? We did just like an hour a month, you know? And it's like, well, that is a good question. But it does beg a further question, which is, well, why is it that when these motherfuckers get found out, when you get a Patterson who is exposed for directly lobbying, habitually, again and again, breaking these rules, when they get found out and exposed, and then they have to resign from their role as a constituency MP even, or like minister or shadow minister or whatever, why is it immediately that they're dropped by these fucking companies? It's because they're no fucking use to them anymore. It's like, can I still be a board member of the paperclip factory? Well, yeah, you can, because the paperclip factory has fuck all to do with you being a constituency MP. You're here because you love paperclips and because you have experience in, I don't know, the paperclip distribution world. But if we've hired you to the board because you're a minister who knows the foreign secretary, or you're a MP who knows the Secretary of State for fucking X, Y, and Z. If we've hired you, if we're paying you $100,000 because of all that, and then you get found out and you lose that job and those connections and nobody wants to have meetings with you, then no, we're not going to pay you another $100,000. What are we paying you for? You don't know anything about the actual business that we do. All you know about is how to set up a meeting, how to lobby, your connections, and so on. So we know that it stinks to high heaven because Patterson was fired by both his lobbying firms. What was it? I think they were called Lynn's Country something or other, and another one was like a food and beverage thing. He was dropped within like 24 hours by both of them after he resigned. So if he was there on the good of his like laurels, you know, his experience and, you know, what he knew about the food game and all that stuff, they would have kept hold of him. They'd been like, yeah, well, he knows his stuff, yeah. So we know that they're crooked. So we need to stop this idea that, like, well, it's perfectly fine for these people to rake it in for 4 hours a month or whatever it is, for hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. It stinks to high heaven. It's interesting, the other thing that sort of piqued my interest with this was the right-wing newspapers getting all outraged about it. I was like, why now? Why have they suddenly gotten like outraged and decided to cover this shit now? Like, why is this causing Boris Johnson problems now over, like, you know, 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago? Like, when this whole time, people like me, and I mean, not really me in any meaningful way, but like people I know and people you know and people you watch and listen to have been fucking ranting and raving about Tory corruption for how long? For months, years, constantly, about like, these guys are fucking corrupt. They've done this for career furthering reasons. They've done this for self-serving reasons. They're not doing this for the public good. They're just trying to secure a board role after they leave government, or that, they've got connections here, or they're on the board for that, or like, it's so obvious that they're corrupt, that it stinks to high heaven, that they're not doing this for the public good, that they are in the pockets of like lobbying firms or think tanks or donors and so on. So why is it that now these journalists are like, oh my God, it's so shocking. Have you heard about this shocking corrupt Tory? This succession of corrupt Tories. This is outrageous. And it got me thinking, I was like, these guys are like fucking Daily Planet journalists, like in Smallville back in the day. Journalists for the Daily Planet who worked alongside Clark Kent for like 10 years. Every day. They see this guy, and then when it turns out Clark Kent is Superman, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't see this coming. They're like investigative journalists who just can't see what's in front of them the entire time. They're like, the other example is like, did you guys see that news story? This must be a year or two ago now. It's a heavy metal band. And I forget the name now, but it was a real, like, death metal band. The guy that was in it, I think he was a singer. It might have been just lead guitarist or something. But the guy that was in it was, like, 6 foot tall, long, dark hair, looked like a mean motherfucker, like a sort of, Aryan Brotherhood kind of guy with tattoos and a leather jacket. And I know that doesn't necessarily make you a satanic fucking beast, but, he didn't look like a super nice guy. And then the names of his songs were on Spotify, and it was like, I have knives in my house for murder. That was the name of one of them. And then another one was like, my house is full of human skulls. That was the name of another song. And here's this scary guy with these names of these songs that are all about murder. And like another one was called Hammer Smash Face or something. And then it turned out that he was he was arrested for fucking having actual human bodies or bones or something in his house. And I was a bit like, I mean, sometimes, they say you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but sometimes the illustration on the cover is actually really fucking great, and you can trust that. And I feel like it's a bit like that with corrupt Tories. It's a bit like, it's so obvious what's in front of you. Like, where the fuck have you people been? You're supposed to be journalists. Like, I joke a lot about Sun journalists being like, it's basically the fucking Beano. It's like, the unrivaled investigative journalists at the Sun have decided to cover corrupt Tories. I was saying earlier today, I was like, on a TikTok talking about, these right-wing journalists who were suddenly shocked and outraged at Tory corruption. I'm like, will you be staying long in objective reality? Or is this just a little break for you? A little holiday here? Because it's like, we're looking around at Tory corruption. The other elephant in the room, the other obvious thing is Brexit and how detrimental it is to the country, and how much of a weird Boris Johnson ambition vehicle it has been, and how disastrous it's been for everyone, and how the reverberations are still being felt and impacting, but nobody's covering this. And I just wonder, if we can get to this point at the moment where we are actually seeing some good old-fashioned press scrutiny of government, rather than the sycophantic, supine media that we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years, basically ever since the Brexit vote. Now we've got this press scrutiny, this newspapers holding the government to account. Finally, I wonder, I don't want to have too much faith. My faith is on the fucking floor 99% of the time, but could we be on the horizon of, is this a sort of beam of sunlight breaking through the rain clouds, and actually we might be about to see them hold the government to account for Brexit? That would make my fucking decade if we could just see, because here's the thing, there's this idea. Sorry, you can hear the sounds of Dalston in the background. One of these days I will actually invest in a proper studio, and I won't just be walking around London aimlessly. Here's the thing, right, with authoritarian or fascist or just super right-wing governments is there's this idea that if they just keep belittling and mocking and dismissing, quote, the other side, that the other side will just go away. That the other side are just going to sort of stand there and go, oh, can't believe they didn't listen to us. That's really annoying. And then another scandal pops up and then we go, oh, you need to fix this. And then they go, oh, yeah, fuck you bloody lefties or Ramonas or, and they just dismiss us. And then their idea is that then we just go, oh, can't believe they didn't listen to us. Oh, we're so losery. I wish we weren't losing so much. But that's not reality. What actually happens in reality is you can dismiss people and you can mock them and ridicule them and like minimize the right word there, I don't know, but you can sort of dilute their points and you just dismiss them, as much as you like. But people will start off knocking on your door and they'll say, can we get a raise for nurses, please? And you'll say, no, fuck off, losery, Ramonery, lefty, blah, blah, blah. And then they won't get a raise, and the nurses will get poorer, and then the bus drivers get poorer, and then doctors get poorer, and then it goes upwards and upwards, and like lawyers, and then not enough houses are built, and then nobody can afford a house, and then the economy implodes, and then slowly more and more people are knocking on that door, and then they get angrier and angrier and banging the door and banging it down, and eventually they will storm the fucking castle, and there'll be something close to a sort of coup or a revolution, or so it's incredibly self-defeatist and short-termist to just dismiss, quote, the other side. It's sort of the political equivalent of disrespecting your partner, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, whoever. You might win in the short term if you say, I'm going out tonight, and then your husband goes, oh, okay. And then the following night you go, yeah, I'm going out again. And then he goes, oh, well, can I go out maybe on Friday? And then you go, no, I'm going out on Friday as well. Like, you might, if you carry on acting like that, you'll probably get to go out on Tuesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. Then, Monday he says, oh, I thought I might head round, James's and play pool. And then you go, no, actually, I'm going round. But eventually, if you keep pushing, eventually what's going to happen? He's going to either explode or he's going to leave you or So it's short-termist in the extreme to continue to try to get your way and dismiss and mock and ridicule the other side, because eventually there will be like a resetting of things. Things will be balanced again. And it might not be in such a comfortable way as it could have been had you actually fucking had a grown-up conversation about it. And that's the thing that really winds people like me up, is like, this is supposed to be politics. The whole idea with politics is like, you negotiate, you listen to each side of the debate, you compromise, you sit down with people who have a different point of view, and you work through the night if you have to get to a solution where you don't get everything that you want, they don't get everything that they want, but together you find a way that's like the least worst option, and then you're all happy to sort of shake hands and then move things forward. When was the last time we had anything close to that in British politics? It's been so divisive and unproductive for like 5-6 years now. It's just been like, yeah, can we talk, like, fine, if we need to Brexit, then let's Brexit. We've apparently voted for that. But can we do it over 10 years? Because that's a measured approach to it. That's going to give us time to untangle from you. No, fuck you, Ramona, lefty, liberal, libtard. It's that kind of childish, dismissive attitude that then results in people going like, well, we thought it was an advisory referendum anyway, so we're going to try and get it over to... people don't just say, they didn't listen to us, I guess I'll go and sit down. They just don't. You just piss them off and they get more determined. So I think that's why... I can't even remember how I got onto this now. I think that's what I would like to see at the end of this this corruption expose, if you like, is that first of all, I'd like to see Boris Johnson ejected from power. And then if they're going to replace him with another Tory, I'd just like it to be somebody fucking moderate. Just somebody that is half credible. You know, I'm not somebody I'm going to agree with everything. I'm never going to agree about everything with a Conservative minister. But somebody who can at least form a coherent strategy and back it up with some kind of credible facts and figures and talk about it openly and maturely and in a measured fashion. That's all I'm asking. It's like, don't have a fucking Dominic Raab or a Priti Patel. Somebody just sits there smugly and then dismisses any challenge to them as somehow like hating Britain. That kind of shit just needs to go. The other angle of this, I saw this morning, was I saw a BBC News article that said all of these accusations of Tory corruption are affecting Tory MPs' mental health. Which I loved. I love the fact it was on the BBC. You know, the BBC have, for all intents and purposes, been castrated. And people love to say, oh, BBC's so fucking lefty and woke, I hate the Beeb. You know, all that shit. Well, maybe. Like, if you're flicking through BBC Three's like programming schedule stuff, yeah, a lot of it is going to be cosmopolitan and, you know, LGBT and super anti-racist and all of that. And there's a place for all of that content. That's fine. And if it doesn't vibe for you, then great, don't watch it. But the news, the political editor of the BBC appears to be a close personal friend of Boris Johnson who can't bring herself to criticise the government in any meaningful fucking way at all, even in the week of all of these examples of Tory corruption. And so it's hilarious to then see the BBC's coverage of it come up this morning saying like, Tory MP's mental health is being really seriously affected by these accusations of corrupt. Like, maybe don't be corrupt if it's making you sad. If you feel sad about people calling you a fucking corrupt crook that's looting the public purse, what do you think the solution is for that? You got two solutions. Number one, you could go and seek out some mental health support. Oh, no, wait, you shut all the fucking walk-in NHS centres. You cut all the funding in real terms for mental health support. So, yeah, I guess that one's fucked. What's the other option? Is maybe stop being a corrupt fucking crook. Like, I love this idea that you've got people like Jeff Cox, former Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, on 82 grand a year as an MP in a safe blue seat. And he's off in the fucking Virgin Islands advising firms how to tax dodge. And people are like, you tax dodging, amoral, second jobbing cunt. And then Laura Kuenssberg is straight out the gate going, oh, careful now, careful. His mental health, remember? Like, I'm sure his mental health is fine, because he released a statement last night suggesting that he couldn't have done anything wrong because all of his constituents have voted him in with a greater majority every single time, which is an incredibly cynical way to respond to criticism. Because he's an MP, I can't remember the fucking name of the place now, but it's a solid Conservative seat. And so this idea that he couldn't have done anything wrong because he keeps getting voted back in is like, you know, you could fucking put a blue rosette on a penguin in his town and it would be voted in. It's, you know, you're never going to get rid of Geoffrey Cox unless he resigns, or which he might do this week. But yeah, he's in the hot seat now, isn't he? It's funny, man. Like, these guys, they have no fucking understanding of morals, of ethics. The first thing that they say is like, well, I haven't been voted out. It's up to the voters if they want to vote me out. Which is, as I say, like, incredibly cynical for Tories who sit quite comfortably in the Tory heartland. But it's also kind of, it's the reason it's sort of devoid of morals is it's like there's a lot of things that aren't against the rules, that aren't against the law, you know, but we don't fucking do them. You know, I could walk past an old lady on the street and I could whisper at her, "You fucking old lady," like, and she wouldn't like it, And I wouldn't need to do it. I would make her day worse, and I'd probably hurt her feelings. You fucking old lady. But I don't do it, because it's not the right thing to do. Even though sometimes I might feel like doing that, you know, especially if they're walking slowly and I'm trying to get somewhere. You fucking old lady. I like the sort of restraint at the end of that, by the way. Like, because you would expect somebody to go, you fucking old bitch, wouldn't you? Like, you fucking old cunt, you old twat. You know, there has to be another swear word on the end for it to really punctuate. You fucking old bitch. So then restraining yourself, you fucking old lady. Like, it's like, you sort of neuter it a little bit. It shows like I've started off angry, and then somewhere in that sentence I've sort of like gone, yeah, she's not so bad, you know. You fucking old lady. Yeah, lady will do. Last thing I want to talk about on this episode is these social care compulsory jabs. So this is something that's come into force today that I heard about on the Julia Hartley-Brewer show this morning. God help me. Such is the deliriousness that my daughter leaves me in when she wakes me up at fucking 3 a.m. that all I can do is just throw her in the back of the car. Not literally, like in the car seat, right? And then I drive around the town with 2 fucking Costa coffees to keep me awake and start my day. And that's the only way I can sort of placate her and keep her in one place where I don't have to exercise too much energy to sort of handle her. And then, you know, and the only real thing I'm listening to is like Paul Ross on talk radio. He's talking about films and cinema and stuff, and that's sort of half interesting to me. And then after that is fucking Julia Hartley-Brewer. And she's off on one every fucking morning. It's like she's someone's grandma and she's missed her medication, and then like somewhere in fucking South London there is a Julia Hartley-Brewer shaped hole in a nursing home, and nursing staff going like, oh fuck, she got out again. You know, she's going off on one every morning. And today it was about social care and how we're forcing these care workers to get the jab, and her phrasing of it, the wording of it, is so telling and unsurprising. She's like, is it right that as of today we are sacking, I don't know, N number of social care workers because they can't, or they refuse to get the jab? We're sacking them. I'm like, nobody's sacking them. Where is this fucking, who's writing this copy? Nobody's sacking any care workers. Like, it's no different to like if you worked in KFC, and let's say now, right, we're in November, you start getting stuff like, you get a little letter put into your payslip so you can't miss it, and the letter says, as of February 2022, all staff need to have training on food and beverage safety, right? Let's say that happens. So KFC warn you that you need to do this qualification in order to work in a restaurant in the UK, and you go, I'll get around to it. And then you get another reminder next month, in next month's payslip, and then like in the weeks leading up to February 2022, you get text messages through, and every week it's like, don't forget, you have to do your food and beverage safety course, otherwise you will no longer be able to work in a restaurant. And then it gets up to February the 1st, and then you go on fucking talk radio and go like, I can't believe I'm being cancelled. You know, that's what it's like. It's like, it's to keep people safe. It's to minimise risk. It's to make sure that people don't get, you know, in that scenario, a tummy upset or fucking E. coli, or like some sort of like tummy viral thing that could have been spared had you just met the qualifications to work in that. You know, and it's the same thing with this. It's like, just have the fucking jab and then there's no problem. And I get this idea that like, it's not the state's responsibility to inject stuff into your body. But I mean, it's like, isn't it just easier to just have the fucking jab? Why does everyone have to need to be a fucking freedom fighter? Why does everything have to be like, oh, I'm so oppressed, the government are oppressing me? Everyone likes to think that they're fucking Braveheart now. I would love to see like a few of these like anti-jab, anti-mask, anti-EU, super Brexity pricks just like off they go into a real like war-torn dictator oppression kind of country setup, you know, or even just sit in a support group for people who have escaped tyranny. And like the first guy's like, Yeah, it was really bad. I lived in the Congo for like 7 years, and every day the government soldiers would storm into my house and rape my wife and beat my children. And I said I was a Christian, and they cut off 2 of my fingers, and I kept saying I was a Christian whenever they asked me, and then they kept cutting off more of my fingers and my toes, and it was really bad. I was very oppressed and very scared every day, and I made it out of that. Then it gets to the next person, and they go, yeah, well, I lived in the southern states, Missouri or something, and yeah, my husband was black and I was white, and every day we were tormented and oppressed, and they burnt down our house, and then finally we managed to save enough money, and we got away, and it was actually very terrifying, and anyway, it's just really good to be here amongst people who have been through similar struggles. And then finally it gets to you. They pass the talking cushion to you, and it's your turn to speak, and you go, yeah, I was asked to get 2 jabs, or they said I couldn't be a social care worker anymore. Like the other 2 are like, I'm sorry, what? The first guy's like, yeah, what? Yeah, well, I know it doesn't sound like much, but it's actually, I was very oppressed. They asked me nicely to get 2 jabs. They warned me several weeks in advance. And I just decided I didn't really want to do it, so I didn't. And then I lost my job as a social care worker. Like, what, I'm sorry, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, you'd be laughed out of there. People would be like, "Are you taking the piss? What is this for you? You love coming in here and taking? Are you mocking us? You know?" I don't know, man. It's funny and it's depressing. Like, firstly, it's depressing because I've got like friends, smart people, intelligent people who have fallen into this trap, and I like to think of them as radicalized. You know, they've read too many articles, they've been bigged up and retweeted one too many times by a few other people on Twitter, and I don't know, what was that super right wing or like alt-right thing, Parler. They've been re-parlered one too many times, and now they've got it in their head that they're doing something that's worthwhile. That they had a point, that they should be listened to, that they should carry on doing this, and they'll get more retweets and reparlers or whatever. And they are, and it is a form of radicalization, I think. But the other thing, like the thing that's funny about it, is the sort of right-wing concern for social workers. You know, it's like, why is Julia Hartley-Brewer on talk radio this morning fretting about what happens to sacked social workers, social care workers? Why is she on the radio suddenly caring about sacked nursing home workers? Oh, it's really terrible, they're being sacked. Well, no, they're not. You know, we've been over this. Well, I know, but it's really bad because they're being told to choose between being vaccine-free or having employment. Right, okay, well, where was this concern when austerity was cutting down the number of like nursing home staff? When did you start giving a fuck about public sector workers, about social care, about hospital staff, about nurses? Like, have you ever raised any concern about the numbers of these people who are in employment or who are then made unemployed? Or no, I haven't. Well, then why now? Why does this bother you? And it kind of just falls into that like weird alt-right, anti-vax, anti-mask, libertarian, pro-Brexit weirdness, doesn't it? It's like it's all part of the same half of the country. And I know people are going to say shit like, well, I voted Brexit, but I'm not anti-mask. Well, okay, cool. But I think you're in the minority. And yes, you should be applauded for being, you know, pro-science and aligning yourself with the studies that show that masks are effective in reducing the spread. And the very clear examples of countries who have mandated mask use, who have seen lower transmission. But you can't deny that, I mean, this is just anecdotal, obviously, but if I look at my friends who were pro-Brexit, they're also pro-Trump. They're also anti-mask. They're also, on a good day, just vaccine skeptic. They populate the same shit over and over again. They're basically all Joe Rogan. they're all kind of, I mean, they're not, muscly and like bald and the rest of it, but they are all basically him. They all sit in that sort of pseudo-intellectual, anti-mask. I think that if I have a jab, I'm being oppressed. I won't let the state inject shit. It's. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you de-radicalize people like that. But yeah, there's something weird to that. Anyway, listen, guys, I've been fucking rabbiting on for so long to myself, and I've got actually quite thirsty, so I'm going to go and get myself a drink. Thank you so much for listening. If any of these subjects, topics, or points, or whatever have been interesting to you, then please do give me a tweet at Aid Thompson, and stay tuned. I'll have another episode next week with a guest, hopefully, and ciao for now. Take care, guys.